Going into my Pacific Crest Trail thru hike, I had no idea what the I was doing.
This is how you remember. Oh, God.
I've been known to do that from time to time, but for real, I was about to hike through an entirely new environment for me. I had never been in a desert before. Like, what the hell is going on with this thing? That's what I could have looked like out there.
Oh, I was a little worried going to bed last night.
All of this is to say a different environment means different backpacking gear. Before I started the PCT, I researched as much as I could. I made the best gear decisions I could make, and then I just kind of sent it. I went into the trail with an open mind towards my gear. I assumed that I was going to have to make some changes as I gained more experience hiking on the West Coast, and honestly, I was pleasantly surprised to realize that I actually did a pretty good job choosing my gear before I left. I didn't have to make a ton of major changes, and I felt pretty comfortable with my gear from the start. However, I still did tweak a few things in my gear setup. I picked up a few items, I sent home a few items, and I did make two major changes to my sleep/shelter systems. In this video, we are gonna cover it all, folks. First, let me figure out how to turn my camera on. It's been a while since I've done this. Actually, let me just take a piss real quick. And okay, here we go. Here is every single gear change I made on my Pacific Crest Trail thru hike.
All right, so the first piece of gear that I swapped out, I changed on the PCT, was my water bottles. Well, I guess I didn't swap the actual type of bottle, but I swapped the capacity. I swapped the amount of bottles that I was carrying. I started out with 4 of these buggers right here, the 1 liter smart water bottles. And then I also had a 2 liter platypus for 6 liters total capacity. I'm real glad I did that because I definitely needed those 6 liters when I was hiking through the desert. But after I finished the desert, I got into the old Sierra there. That is beautiful. I was like, okay, I don't really need a full 6 liter capacity anymore. I'm gonna take the drastic step of going down to 5. Yeah, I went down to 5 liters. That's huge, I know. It did actually make a pretty big difference because now instead of carrying 4 freaking smart bottles that were just a pain to deal with, and 4 bottles, like that's too many bottles, guys. There's too many bottles. So what I did is I bought 2 1.5 liter smart bottles instead, which brought my capacity down to 5 liters, so just a little bit less than the 6 liters, but now I only had 2 bottles. That's like the perfect amount of bottles. Oh man, I miss doing these videos. The next little gear change that I did also happened after I left the desert, and that was I had my amazing mother send me this sack of shit right here. This is my bear bag line. I've just got a little DCF pouch here. Also, that's Flossie's face. Hello, Flossie. And inside of it, I just have like 50 feet of the Zingit cheap, easy, lightweight cord to hang my bear bag with. I'm not gonna lie, if you hang a bear bag on a regular basis on the PCT, people are gonna think you're kind of a pussy. I don't really care though. It's kind of fun. Like, I like hanging a bear bag. It's just a fun activity. I'm pretty freaking good at it too, so I like to flex on people with it a little bit. But the vast majority of people on the PCT don't do it. Again, I'm not gonna say you should or you shouldn't. You probably should, but also most people don't do it and they're totally fine, just to be totally transparent. After we finished the desert, once there was actually some trees, I would have done it through the desert, but 95% of the time there was no trees, so it just was impossible, so I didn't even carry it. Once I got out of the desert, I was like, okay, I guess I'll do the bear bag thing. So mother shipped me this and I started friggin' hucking those rocks, dude. Just hucking them. So close. Oh! Another pretty significant gear change I made was when I got to Washington, when I crossed over that bridge of the gods, man. I said a prayer and I picked up my freaking sleeping bag liner. This is the C2 Summit Thermo Light. Right? Thermo Light. I was right. I think it's like the 10-degree one. I'm honestly not sure, but it's pretty sweet. It weighs more than I would like it to, but you know. Before I left for the PCT, I knew I was gonna wanna pick up this sucker at some point, just because I figured I'd probably be finishing close to, you know, the end of the season. It's gonna be cold up in Washington. And so I just kind of arbitrarily chose the Washington-Oregon border to be the spot that I got it sent. I picked it up, I walked into Washington, and then I hiked straight uphill in a 90-degree, 100% humidity day. Man, oh, it's so hot today. It's so hot. And I was like, why the f am I carrying extra weight for warmth when it's so hot? But then I did actually end up using it quite a bit in Washington. I was glad that I had it. And if I hadn't quit like a little bitch, I would have definitely needed it the further north I got. And you know, it was getting cold and shit, so. Oh, and by the way, guys, you gotta subscribe to the channel, dude. I wanna get to 100 100,000 subscribers. I'm not even close. It's quite a lofty goal. But when I get there, I want to get that plaque that they send you when you get 100,000, and then I want to take it backpacking. I want to double my base weight, and I want to make love to it. So help me get to 100,000. Okay, another gear change that I made is actually a piece of gear I ended up getting rid of, so I don't have it with me, but I started the PCT with just a little raw ology cork ball. Okay, this kind of looks like this. I used it because I was having some issues with my foot at the start. It turns out that ball was not doing shit for that particular injury. It did feel nice, honestly. Like, and I'm sure it helps for other things, but it wasn't doing anything for my injury. So after like a few hundred miles, I threw that ball away. No more raw balls were carried in my pack. All right, let's get on to the big boys. The two biggest gear changes that I made on the PCT. First one is I freaking bought a new quilt. I bought a new quilt in the middle of the PCT. However, I did basically buy the same quilt I had before, but it's a little bit different. Let me explain, all right? When I was on the Appalachian Trail, I used a 30-degree hammock gear Econ top quilt, and it was amazing. I never washed it a single time. I used it on every backpacking trip from the entire AT all the way up until Hiker Town in the PCT, which is a good little ways into the desert, so hundreds of miles. Before the PCT, I thought about getting a new one, but I was looking at my quilt and I was like, you know what, this sucker, it's going great. I haven't even washed it and it's still going strong. I'm just gonna send it with the same quilt. And after, you know, about a month on the PCT, I was like, you know what, this quilt is still great. It was still working, but I was like, man, it's just not as warm as it used to be because like it's just been used so much, and you know, I always fart in it and stuff. And so I was like, all right, I need to get a new quilt. But I love the quilt so much, I was like, I want to get the same one. And so I bought the same quilt. I got a different color. I got black. I got a 30-degree once again. I got it in the wide version. And then the only difference is instead of having like the cinch foot box, which this is not a foot box, but you know what I'm saying? Like a little cinch thing going on at the end. So like pretend this is the bottom of the foot box, you know, you just cinch it up like that. Instead of doing that, I just had a normal like sewn closed foot box for the you know, the new one. I'm really glad I got it. As soon as I got to Hiker Town, I picked this sucker up. I threw my old one into the hiker box. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away, even though it was old and disgusting. It was still working. It wasn't torn or anything. It would still keep you pretty warm. So I put it in the hiker box. I went to sleep because this is when we were night hiking. And when I woke up in the evening, I noticed there was another hiker at the hostel there who was like scoping it out. She had like taken it out of the hiker box and she was like looking at it. And I didn't say anything to her. And I was like, should I say something to her? Because I was watching her like eyeing up this piece of gear, like getting ready to pack it up and take it with her. And I was just thinking about like the freaking thousands of miles I've hiked with that quilt and like farted in and probably shit in. I banged a few hookers in there. It's just like, I was like, is she really gonna take that quilt? Like, God bless her. God bless her. I don't know if she ended up, I ran into her like a month later and I didn't say anything. So if she's out there, she's from somewhere in Europe. I don't know. It's pretty funny though. And I hope it served her well. Okay, let's get on to the biggest gear change that I made on the PCT. This one will not surprise those of you that actually paid attention in the PCT series. Biggest gear change I made was I swapped the Gossamer Gear 1 V1 tent, which is the stupidest f***ing name, for the Z-Packs Plex Solo tent, which they sent to me for free. Full disclosure, okay? I made this joke already, but I am spoiled, I am privileged, I have a massive penis, so I get gear sent to me for free. The reason that I swapped these tents was because number one, this one was lighter, and number two, I was not crazy about this tent, the Gossamer Gear tent, in the rain. Now, with that said, I only slept in it in rain 2 times on the PCT. However, some of you might recall that before the PCT, Luke and I went out for a little jaunt for a couple days on the Art Loeb Trail in North Carolina, where I got rained on a ton in this tent. I never got completely soaked, but I definitely got wet inside of the tent. I did not like that. I'm gonna talk about this in more detail in future videos because I'm gonna do a full comparison of these two tents because they are similarly designed tents. Of course, there's some differences, but honestly, I'm pretty sure Gossamer Gear really f***ed up this tent right here. Not their general, the one, but like the one that they sent to me, like this exact tent. One of the seams is not sealed properly in this tent. And Flossie, my hiking partner, had the same exact tent. He did not get as wet inside of his tent as I did, although your mother got very wet inside of this tent. And so I'm pretty sure it was just my tent that had an issue, like a defect. So I don't know if this is a common thing with their tents or if this is literally the first time it's ever happened and they just got really unlucky and happened to send it to the guy with a bunch of followers on YouTube. Fucking idiots. I don't know what the deal with that is, but I do know that one of the seams in here was not taped correctly. I saw water running through it. I looked at the seam. It was clearly not sealed correctly. So that's the biggest reason why I didn't trust this tent. And then when Z-Packs reached out, of course I'm gonna say yes. Shut up. If Z-Packs offered you free gear, you'd say yes too. Stop typing. You're an asshole.